Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Ajamu Baraka. Nice to be getting together with Ajamu again, and we're going to be talking about some very important things. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Ajamu Baraka, and in my opinion, he's a great philosopher, a man of great thoughts and discussions, a man who's a writer and an activist, and really a just an actual absolute standard bearer in activism. Ajamu, welcome to back to my humble channel.
I'm so glad to be back. As I was saying before we came on air, I miss you. Glad to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm gonna have Margaret Kimberly, the wonderful Margaret Kimberly. She'll be on tomorrow. So my Black Agenda report and friends and at any rate, let's get started here. This is on my mind. I definitely want to start here. I really haven't had a lot of people on to discuss this issue, and I do want to start with this. Ibrahim Traore. One of the things that I brought up, and I'll, throw it out to you. I had a couple people push back from my WPFW show, my Pacifica show, because we've got this black general, Michael Langley. They bring him before the Senate, and he does the old, yes, of all things, for him to say this, yes, the Burkina Faso people are using their gold for security for Ibrahim Traore instead of the people. And I'm thinking, well, he better have security because you're trying to kill him, right? But even the idea, when you look at the history of colonialism, going into countries, killing people to steal specifically their gold and silver and resources, that this person would do that. And what we hear is this: we've got 5 black senators, however many it is, apparently 0. They're sitting in a room saying nothing. And the empire uses these people to go after. To me, this guy is like the Lion of Africa to me. He's, I get the spirit of Lumumba and Sankara and Nkrumah when finally I get that feeling when I see this man standing up, as proud as he is standing up for change in Burkina Faso. Your thoughts on all of that, Ajamu?
Well, I mean, look, this is an important topic to discuss because, as you said, uh, Traore has become a symbol in a sense. Uh, he represents the aspirations that many people have for a united African continent, a continent that can be equal on the planet in terms of being able to comment on things that impact all of us, impact collective humanity. But as long as Africa is balkanized in the way that it is, then it remains dependent. And so there is a yearning among African people on the continent and throughout the Africa diaspora for us to reverse the trajectory of politics that have consolidated the division among African people and move us toward a new kind of politics that can lead toward consolidation. And so this alliance of Sahel states is important. His symbolic leadership is important. And because of that, many people are concerned about his security. We all know what happened with brother Thomas Sakara, and we know that the way imperialism strikes is they strike early, and so there's real concerns about his safety. But he's not afraid, and we can't be timid in terms of voicing our support for this brother, for his state, and for the process that they are trying to undertake. It's a very difficult one, especially when you have to do this sort of from the top down in terms of the military taking power and building systematically civilian structures that can ensure that the process continues going in a positive and progressive direction.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen was that, there are other powers. I think Russia has sent in some other countries have sent in some people to help with his. So I've been reading, looking in, of course, the mainstream news in the U.S. to see what the empire is saying, right? And a couple of things. Russia is sending in people to protect him, and I'm thinking, well, that's good, but that's supposed to be bad, right? And also, this is important, and which takes me into something. The Burkina Faso people in the U.S. empire, they literally put it like this: the troops from the Burkina Faso, his soldiers are killing civilians, and the way they put it, these Al Qaeda terrorists are fighting his troops like they're protecting, like the Al Qaeda people or ISIS are literally protecting the civilians, and that his troops are actually killing civilians when it's the other way around. And this is the way I want to add that to. At a time when the president of the United States is shaking hands with an ISIS terrorist who has a $10 million or something like that, 10 million or more on his head, who is wanted all over the world.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's hypocrisy. It demonstrates that this word terrorism and coming from officials in the West has no meaning, especially when you look at the activities of their intelligence agencies, when you look at the activities of the various states who are involved in systematic state terrorism. So this becomes just an instrument to confuse, and to divide, and to deflect and divert attention away from the agenda that these forces continue to pursue. So you're right. Here you have Trump shaking the hands of someone who was the deputy in charge, ISIS, who has now assumed power in Syria, demonstrating the successful conclusion of a regime change process that started almost decade or so ago, that has now resulted in the very thing that many of us argued was going to happen. And that is a right wing jihadist government in place that would engage in systematic brutality against the Alawites and the Druze I mean, that's happening here. But yet now they have the blessings of the West, sanctions now being lifted, and Syria is being reincorporated into the communities of nations, or so I say, Western nations. And all of us who were raising these issues, uh, arguing that this was undermining the sovereignty of their nation, undermining the objective interests of the secular Syrian people, we were called Asadists and everything under the sun. Okay, and these are from so-called progressives and so-called leftists. So this is the nature of the politics we have to deal with today. That's why we don't put any kind of value on these kinds of labels that the West and Western nations will impose on people, and we certainly don't give any attention to this framing of certain questions as though these people represent some kind of superior moral position. How do you talk about democracy when you're celebrating and supporting these anti-democratic forces around the world? So this is the issue from Burkina Faso to any other place around the world where you find that the West, and in particular the U.S., has put certain nations in their crosshairs. And we've got to be clear about what the real terms of these struggles really are. If not, we'll be confused. We'll see situations like what you described earlier, where you have a U.S. General who is openly talking about the need for subverting a African state with black senators in the room, and nobody says a mumbling word about the history of U.S. subversion, U.S. destabilization, U.S. assassinations on the African continent, and U.S. coups. But this is the nature of the kind of neo-colonial leadership that they're also pushing around the world.
Well, and I got to add this, and we see the same thing in Syria. Who was it that opened the door to this ISIS criminal running Syria right now? Barack Obama. They stuck
Thank
a
you.
black face out there and said, okay, we're going to take out Muammar Gaddafi and we're going to make up lies about that. The wealthiest African country in the world at that time, they used a black president, a black face, so they could take that out. They used Barack Obama so they could go after Libya. And now, thanks to Barack Obama, we see the fighting going on right now in Libya. Terror is terror, just a terror place, which they want to keep it that way. They do not want Libya to stabilize. And now they're deliberately turning Syria into Libya. And the same way they used Michael Langley to go after Burkina Faso to destabilize Africa, Barack Obama was the one that we can thank for this.
That's been the genius of the colonialists from the West, the ability to find natives who will cooperate with them. And that is, you are absolutely correct. The Obama administration was one of the most aggressive, militaristic presidencies in the entire post-war period. And people have to be reminded of that because you're right. There are things that the U.S. probably could not have been successful at on the African continent and other parts of the world, but are having this empty suit, this front person for U.S. imperialism, fronting for their interests. The military assault, the vicious military assault, was something that people need to understand is parameters. Think about this. We know that over 50,000 people have now been murdered in Gaza over the last 18 months or so. Okay, it's estimated that in those 4 months of intensive bombings and in the process of overthrowing the Libyan government, it's estimated that between 30 and 50,000 people lost their lives. And the 50,000 mark is relatively, some people say, still too little. So it was even more intense, more vicious than what we see in Gaza. The difference is this, Garland. With Gaza, we have a live stream genocide. We saw the images that were kept away from us in other conflicts. In Libya, we didn't see those images except we saw images of the so-called freedom fighters. So the true brutality of that assault to destroy Libya and in effect to destroy the process toward African liberation was not brought to the consciousness of the people in the U.S. and the global consciousness, and so they were able to get away with that. So this is what they do beyond Libya, the subversion that started in Syria, and this was a regime, a government, if you will, that has a number of successes for U.S. imperialism. Not only Syria and Libya, but the coup in Egypt, the war that they waged in Yemen. This was a vicious, aggressive administration, but one that had the full support of many people in the U.S., including for the first time in the history of Black people, support of Black people giving their full support to these kinds of imperialist adventures. Up until Barack Obama, we've always been suspicious and always been in opposition to these kinds of activities on the part of the U.S. settler colonial state. But what we see is that Obama represented the 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 end result of a 50-year counter-revolutionary process within the Black communities and against Black people. And so there's been a significant shift in consciousness, and people identify themselves as quote unquote Americans, and wrapping themselves in the flag, and indeed wrapping themselves in the criminality of this settler colonial state and empire.
Well, and I'll say this, I believe that, and people get mad at me, that when the success they had of using Obama to pursue their imperial machinations, right? I believe that was kind of the woke culture thing started, because they started saying, well, wait a minute, we can do all kind of devious and evil deeds, right? But we'll just simply say, like right now, Southcom. Who's in charge of Southcom, the Southern Command, which is all over South America doing all kind of devious deeds? They have a woman in charge, right? I think they started realizing that what we need to do is we need to mask this imperialism, mask this bombing, violence, and all that. We'll put a woman, we'll put a gay person, we'll put a black person, a Latino, we'll put somebody there, and then we can claim, look at the good we're doing. You know, I can't stand Hollywood. Can't stand it. And let me tell you why. Every single thing I turn on, there's one black person, one white person, one gay person, one Latino person, one there, right? This virtue signaling, right? No place supports the genocide in Gaza. There's no place you can go more so than Hollywood and find support for the genocide in Gaza. But it's the same thing as Obama. They put forward this veneer of justice. We're standing up. Look at that. We've got all the minorities. We got all the women, gay, everybody here. But yet you're standing for the slaughter and the literal starvation of men, women, and children. But I'm supposed to think you're good because you have one, because everything looks like a Benetton ad. It makes me sick to watch it.
Well, that's part of the cultural war that's being waged against people in the United States and really globally. That to legitimize the viciousness, legitimize the assaults on oppressed people and people who are fighting for their national liberation, to give the impression that they're on the right side of history, that is the Western states. And it's a little bit easier to do that when you have people who look like the same people you are murdering, who are articulating the agenda and the program of the imperialists. But you know that's going to come to an end, Garland, because one of the consequences of the Trump administration is that basically, you know, this commitment to diversity and inclusion and equity, you know, objectively principles that could be embraced. You know, it's time out for that now, because basically what is being embraced now is a renormalization of white supremacy, and that is a very dangerous phenomenon also. But you know, those of us who are people of conscience, we are consistently trying to help people to understand it's not about the color of your skin, your race, ethnicity, or whatever. It's about what kinds of principles and values do you have? How do you see a collective humanity? What kind of vision do you have for the future? Can you embrace systems and programs that delegitimize and degrade other human beings? Do you support politics that create a hierarchy among human beings, where some people are exploited and other people benefit from that? You know, we have to have a different ethical system and say that our politics has to reflect that commitment, a real commitment to authentic universalism, one in which, you know, we are grounded in a vision of humanity in which we see the common and equal value of all human beings. That is a radical perspective, and that is a perspective that the voice, the people who push out imperialist policies and colonial policies don't want to see being embraced by the vast majority of the people on this planet.
I agree with you. You know, oftentimes people will call in my show in Pacifica and ask me about, you know, the solutions, this and that. And one guy always calls me, and I think the black people need their own political party or this or that. And they always ask me, and I say, this is me. I understand there's different groups, and that various groups have various particular needs as a member of that group, right? Okay. I see politics through the lens of economic class. I believe the working class needs to come together because there's an old saying about a bayonet in a war. There's a working man on either side of it, right? He's getting stuck with it and he's carrying it. And I think that when you look at what's going on, Trump's over there, right? But really, what is he doing in Saudi Arabia? For all the talk of this, he signed a deal for like $800 billion. When it comes down to it, right? There's some $400 million plane and all this kind of stuff. When it comes down to it, why do they want Burkina Faso? Because they like the land or whatever? No, because it's got gold. It's got, you know what I mean? When it comes down to the ruling elite, it's always about the appropriations of other people's funds and natural resources. And if you look at Gaza, to me, if you look at Palestine, occupied Palestine, there's value to the land. That ultimately, when it comes down to it, to me, it's settler colonialism. That, you know what I mean? It's not even about a religion. It's settler colonialism first and foremost, under the veneer of, oh, we've got to, God gave this to the Jews 2,000 years ago, or whatever the case may be. But to me, it's all about colonialism. Your thoughts?
Well, in so-called Israel, it is. It is a settler colonial project. It is a settler colonial project that's structured now on the basis of apartheid, and structured on the basis of denying the humanity, the physical existence of Palestinians. It is a project very similar to the project that evolved in the United States of America. And that's why I think there's such an affinity between the two, because it is a settler colonial process. And we know that of all the forms of colonialism, the most vicious was and is settler colonialism, because the what is the objective is to control the land, and the people on the land become just an impediment for your full domination. If you don't need those people to provide cheap labor, then the formula for genocide exists. And that's what we saw that happen in the U.S. Once the target was the land, they didn't need the native people to work the land, because they're bringing in Africans to provide the free labor. Same thing with what's unfolding in the desire to create a greater Israel. That basically they're not concerned about the people occupying the land; they want the land, and therefore we see this genocidal program unfolding in Gaza, and we see how they're moving to annex the West Bank. So yes, having that understanding of these objective interests is really, really important, and that will help us to avoid the kinds of divisions that the enemy will create, suggesting that some people should identify with these processes, or to remain silent in order to get paid themselves. So you have a situation, for example, you have some people who are confused and say that, who are black, who say, "Oh, what's happening in Gaza has nothing to do with us." That our response to that is, you must be mad. If they can degrade and dehumanize and justify the genocidal policies in Gaza, what in the world do you think they can do for you or to you? Okay. Not only that, we're human beings. Aren't the Palestinians human? Do we want to embrace a framework that suggests that there is a hierarchy of humanity, and that some people deserve to have their families bombed and their hospitals destroyed and their roles eliminated, and to be starved and to death and to be burnt? What kind of world do you want to live in? You are a human being. Therefore, what they are doing to Palestine, they're doing to all of us, and they're doing this in your name. So you have a moral responsibility. Either you oppose it, or you are in collusion with it. So, but that is a new, I would argue, Garner, that's a new attitude among Black folks. We have never been that morally corrupt before. But again, this is a consequence of what I call the Americanization of the Black person in the U.S., incorporating and assimilating these kinds of backward, anti-human kinds of cultural notions. And so therefore you have, movement in the U.S., a movement opposed to the genocide, primarily led by Jewish Americans, with the white Americans, the Black folks, and everybody else of color who are part of opposing these policies. Because again, if you don't oppose them, then basically you are in collusion with them. You are morally condemned. And when they write this segment of human history at this moment in 2025, you want to be able to know that you're on the right side. You want to be able to tell your grandkids, if you have them, or sons and daughters or whatever, that you oppose this madness. You're not going to be like the Germans that were silent during the years of the rise of the Nazis. You want to be on the right side of history. And that is why many of us are willing to step out there and to be absolutely clear in our opposition to what's unfolding in Gaza, what's unfolding in Syria, what is the madness we see now in Libya, and the normalization of domination that we see throughout the world, including Biden's war in Ukraine.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, one of the things I think that was an interesting time for me was watching those 3 months before the election. And you know, you and I really haven't sat down and discussed that since. And that was this again. It goes back to Obama, Michael Langley. What did they do? Oh, this time we've got a black, which supposedly, allegedly black. She was said she was Indian, and then all of a sudden she turned black when she started running for office, but this, and that's something that I have gone around in circles with a lot of black people about. Well, you've got to vote for her because I said, no, I'm voting for Jill Stein and Butch Ware. Well, they go to win. I said, I'm voting for them because of Gaza. I don't want to hear about it. And to me, to get people to support the Democrats was bad enough. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't supporting them anyway. But in the midst of a genocide, they're literally committing a genocide in front of your face. And the best they can say is we're working tirelessly for a ceasefire. And we found out that was a lie. I didn't have to find out it was a lie. I already knew it. But that to me was it was a terrible thing to do. To me, to Black Americans, to say to people, Americans, period, all members of the Democratic Party, to say to them, you have to ignore the fact that we're committing a genocide because Trump might get in. Well, what is he going to do that's worse than a genocide? He's going to carry on whatever you've been doing. That's what he did last time. He was in for 4 years. He didn't do that much different than me. He carried on a little more openly what the Democrats were doing. But that whole concept of running for office, sticking this fool out there, claiming she's a black woman, and then trying to get people to ignore a genocide. And sadly, many people did out of fear. Your thoughts?
I mean, the real development among Black people that we wish we were at would be that even if she was Black, that she would not receive our votes because of her policies, specifically because of her support for militarism and the genocide in Gaza. It shouldn't matter if someone's Black, white, or whatever. You cannot give your vote to a candidate, to a party, to a system that is committing a racist rampage, a genocide in Gaza. You can't do that. If you do it, then you are corrupting yourself morally. And so that is the kind of politics we have to see develop in the United States of America. This notion that Kamala Harris was bringing back the joy and all this kind of crap. Where's the joy when people are dying every day in Gaza? It was a supreme expression of selfishness for people to suggest that we had to support Kamala Harris in order to forestall the continuation of the consolidation of fascism in the U.S. My position on that was that's immoral because basically not only are you not not only you're not forestalling fascism because we already have fascism, and the driving force of it has been always been the neoliberal Democrats, but you are suggesting that you will support a fascist in the United States, and in order to ensure that there will be fascism and a genocide taking place in Gaza. What does that suggest? So basically, this is the kind of immoral politics that have now become normalized in the U.S. And we have to reject that because basically, we are providing the foundation for all kinds of horrific things that happen to not only us, but everybody else. The fact that it was the Biden administration and the liberal Democrats that supported the attacks on their own children at these elite colleges and universities. That provided the foundation for Trump to take it to the next level. And they began to put foreign students in jail, to send people out of the country, to suggest to people that they needed to voluntarily deport themselves, basically, to put a chill on all opposition to this slaughter of human beings in Gaza. And the Democrats have no moral footing to oppose what's happening because they provided the foundation. The same thing with the war in Ukraine. The same thing as you pointed out with the war in Syria. That it is a bipartisan ruling class agenda is being supported by this system that either you buy into and support or you oppose.
I agree. I certainly agree. There's no room for sitting on the fence here. I did want to ask you about Iran. I was recently on Press TV, and they, asked me my thoughts, and I said, the obvious, and that is, you had a deal with the U.S. in the past. The United States never even kept their deal from the beginning. The day they signed that deal, they were supposed to drop sanctions. They never dropped sanctions. Then Donald Trump comes in and he followed up and just said, we're dropping out of the deal. And now they're saying, well, we want a deal. I said, in my opinion, any deal that Iran says their position should be, you have to first execute your part of the deal if you want us to execute anything. But how do you get a deal with the devil? That, my point. But your thoughts on the Iranian people, the Iranians, their position, the up to me, and I'll say this. I have a lot of respect for the Shia people, the Iranians. Yemen, they stood up and and kicked a few aircraft carriers out of the Red Sea. That's something that I think people around the world should be proud of. But your thoughts? I understand you've recently had some engagements with the Iranians.
Well, I just returned from Iran about a week or so ago. I had a chance to participate in the third international media festival, bringing together people who are involved in the alternative media globally. I was a judge there at that festival. Um, I had a chance again to talk with many Iranians, including just ordinary people. And one thing, Garland, is quite clear. The people of Iran, they just want to be able to pursue their process in peace. They want to live in peace. They want to maintain their sovereignty. They want to be able to make decisions in terms of how they produce themselves, how to reproduce themselves socially, what kind of economy they are building, um, who they will relate to on the international stage. They want the same kinds of freedoms that theoretically we're supposed to have in the U.S. But yet, because of the decades-long animus that the U.S. authorities have had toward Iran, they have found themselves in the crosshairs for more than 40 years. They just want peace. And so there's some hope in the current discussions, but the people are not naive also for the reasons you just laid out. Here you have this joint comprehensive program of action that was in some ways a very intrusive agreement in terms of Iranian sovereignty, where they agreed to have this daily inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency, cameras throughout their nuclear facilities, and to voluntarily hold the enrichment of uranium to 3.67%. This is all part of their commitment to a energy mix like other nations are involved in to satisfy their energy needs in their country. So nuclear power is part of that mix. Everything was in place. So as you said, it was abrogated by the United States of America. From the very beginning, they were reluctant to live up to their side of the bargain in terms of completely eliminating all of the sanctions. And then finally, the Trump administration basically said, let's quit playing with this and just eliminate it. And so that's what happened. Now there's this new so-called indirect conversations. But the question has to be this: what is the basis of the conversation? If you had an agreement in which you had intrusive monitoring, when you had and all of the evidence suggests, including the U.S. intelligence agencies, have said that there was no evidence to suggest there was any deviation from the agreement. That was also verified again by the International Atomic Energy Agency, that there was no deviation of uranium to weapons program, et cetera, et cetera. It was clean. So what is there to talk about now? What is the basis. You go back to that as a foundation, those agreements. And what was the issue that caused the Trump administration to eliminate or to abrogate the agreement? Well, what they did was they were concerned about Iranian politics and other military capabilities, including their ballistic missile systems. The Iranians understanding the region, understanding the objective agenda of Israel, the Israeli fascist regime, that if they didn't have the capability, the ability to protect themselves, to defend themselves, then they will be open to the constant aggression that other nations, other states have experienced in the region. I mean, look, before they finally overthrew the government in Syria, the Israelis were able to invade their airspace at will. Okay, they will have loved to put the Iranians in the same position. The Bashar al-Assad could not retaliate when they were attacked by the Israelis, but the Iranians could. So they are concerned about, they wanted to undermine the ability of the Iranians to defend themselves. Well, the Trump administration says today that, okay, we're not going to talk about ballistic missiles. The focus is only on the nuclear program. Well, then again, I raised the question to talk about what aspect. You want to go back to the original agreement? Okay, that could be a basis. But if you're not talking about that, what in fact are you talking about? And this is what I think they're talking about, Garland. They're setting up the scenario for the possibility, real possibility of a military assault. They want the talks to collapse. When Trump says that Iran has to dismantle its nuclear program, what is that? What kind of look? They couldn't even agree to that. My reading of what's happening in Iran is that the Iranian authorities, the current president, the prime minister, there's no way they can sell that kind of agreement to the Iranian people. The Iranian people are proud people, and they had to suck it up a lot with the first agreement. And now you're going to come back and say you're going to dismantle your program because these people 8,000 miles away say that you should. No, it's not going to happen. So it is a very worrying situation, Garland, because you know, on one hand, you have many people who believe that something can be worked out, there can be some kind of agreement. On the other hand, you have people who don't believe that this is an authentic attempt to try to resolve the differences. Um, I tend to fall on the side of the people who are very, very skeptical of what's unfolding in Iran with these so-called indirect talks.
I'm with you. I'm at this point just looking at Gaza alone, when you understand the brutality and the brutal nature and the vicious nature of the ruling elite of the U.S., the only thing they understand is force. The positive thing for Iran is that they understand that, and they have developed a defensive capability strong enough to deter the U.S. empire. So I think that if anything stops the imperialists from attacking Iran, it will be Iran's ability to deter them and to strike back, because that's the only thing they really understand. Because if you make a deal with them, I mean, Iran has to look over at Libya, and they said, Libya, get rid of your nuclear program. They got rid of their nuclear program. They attacked them. Syria, get rid of your chemical weapons. They got rid of their chemical weapons. They attacked them. But look at North Korea. North Korea developed their new, if we are honest about it, the reason that North Korea is standing today and still able to be an independent and sovereign nation, and they're allying with China and Russia and BRICS and etc., is because they have a nuclear weapons program. Now, I'm not saying that Iran should, because they have made a decision based on their morals that they don't want one. But they have developed the capability to adequately defend themselves. And to me, that's the only thing that the imperialists understand. And Abraham Traore right now, if it wasn't for the fact that there are people from other countries and other people coming in from around Africa, I understand there's people in the street saying, we'll defend him with our lives. The physical defense of him is the only thing that keeps him going. And I think that's the state, to me, it's very positive for me to look at Iran and see them have their missile. I'm happy to see Iran's missile defense and air defense and increase their abilities to defend themselves, because I know they're not an offensive power. But without that defensive capability, the U.S. empire would jump on them without a second thought.
All nations have the right and indeed the responsibility to be able to defend their nation and their state. And so the Iranians assert that right. You know, the fact of the matter is that, as you said, the threats, the bullying going to directed toward North Korea has stopped because they have the capability to be able to defend themselves. Um, some people argue that the same thing would happen if the Iranians had the capabilities to defend themselves ultimately. But as you said, and the U.S. intelligence has borne this out, there appears to be no commitment to developing a nuclear weapon at this point. Now, the Israelis are trying to pretend like they have found a new nuclear site in Iran. This, of course, happens right after the U.S. enters into these conversations. We hear about some plot that was uncovered supposedly in London by these crazy Iranians who are going to attack the Israeli embassy. These are all public relations stunts to continue the structuring of perceptions of Iran as this wild and crazy nation. And what's extraordinary about that, Garland, is this: here we have these kinds of efforts to try to frame the Iranians as irresponsible by Western nations that are supporting a wild and crazy maniac, lunatic government in Israel that's engaged in a systematic slaughter of human beings in Gaza. We're also supposed to believe that having nuclear weapons in the control of a Benjamin Netanyahu and those crazed right wingers in Israel is supposed to make us safe. That these people represent stable human beings. Who in their right mind really believes that? The people in the global south certainly don't do that. They know, they see the nature of that regime. And they now see the nature of the regime that is the enabler of those kind of politics in Israel and in Gaza. And that is the United States of America. So, you know, this what are they talking about then in these negotiations? Well, they're setting up again a scenario to carry out the only thing that they seem to be good at, that is the West, and that is waging war. But the Iranian people, while they want peace, they seem to be prepared for the real possibility that that might not arrive. The question becomes for those of us in the West, what do we do? Where are our voices? Where is our commitment to international peace? How do we defend the international order when it's quite clear that the international order is being undermined by these outlaw states, primarily by the U.S. and Israel? What happens? What happened to international law? How is it that you're going to have two people from Israel indicted as war criminals, but yet they can move around the world with impunity? How do you explain the fact that we are watching 2.3 million people being starved without any kind of response? That there's no, where are the sanctions on Israel? You know, where where the movements to ensure that they don't participate in the Olympics or the World Cup? You know, where is their political and cultural isolation? You know, this is absolute madness. But what it does, it exposes, it strips away the veneer of civilization for the West. And we are now able to peer into the abyss, peer into the rotten guts of what this thing called Western civilization really is. And it's not a very pretty sight. But the good thing about this is that for all of us in global humanity, we are growing up. No longer can any Western official with any credibility can allow two words to flow from their mouths: democracy, I guess it's two more words, and human rights. because they are the forces that are the most effective in undermining any kind of real commitment to those two terms.
Yeah, I'm 100% aligned with what you say. We got 15 minutes left. I did want to touch base, since I know I didn't put it in there, but one of the things that it's sadly in America, one of the issues which is very close to home that isn't discussed is Haiti. The Biden administration, for all of that, oh, we're standing up for minorities. Oh, look, we've got candidates of color and this and that and all that stuff. I seem to remember, even though I had issues with him, there was a prime minister of Haiti named Jovenel Moise who was machine gun. The prime minister of Haiti under the Biden administration, him and his wife, both. His wife lived, but she was hit with machine gun fire. And the assassins were trained by the DEA. The United States government then came in and grabbed a couple of them, said, "Oh, we'll take them home and we'll deal with it." But it was clearly the hand of the U.S. empire in the assassination. And they made the Biden administration made deals to bring in African mercenaries and oppress, to do everything they can to oppress the rights of the Haitian people to have independence and sovereignty. And I think I would like to get your thoughts on the state of affairs with Haiti. And the real horror is that in the media and in the conversation in the US, that Haiti is not even discussed, as the Haitian people are starved and oppressed year in and year out.
Garland, a couple of years ago, when the people went through the streets, this was in early 2022, to demand democracy. In fact, this is 2021, to demand that there be a real commitment to a transition in Haiti. And those images of all those Black people in the tens of thousands demonstrating and calling for democracy, you would think that that would have been inspiration to progressive and left forces in the West and in the U.S. in particular. But instead, all they ended up doing, in a strange way, Garland, was creating the foundation for the narrative that was then floated by imperialism. That is, these Black Haitians are unable to govern themselves. They are engaged in internal warfare. These voodoo supporting semi-human people are unable to survive without external intervention. And to our somewhat surprise, not so much me, people start buying into that and believing that instead of seeing a authentic and powerful political movement developing in Haiti, that it was all about just internal chaos and violence. And then you start floating down all the stuff about the gangs and all of this, and so the foundation, the racist foundation, was laid by the racist Biden administration to then justify the intervention of forces, U.S. forces, basically under the guise of Kenyan forces into Haiti, all with the objective of doing what? Undermining Haitian democracy and the possibility of a progressive government coming to power in Haiti. Haiti is key. Haiti is key to the Caribbean. Haiti is key to the Americas. If you have a progressive government in Haiti that can work and will work with the government in Venezuela and the government in Cuba and Nicaragua, you have a very solid foundation. That, and then with the final liberation of Puerto Rico, you're seeing then the transition in the Americas that needs to take place, a transition back not to the so-called pink tide, but a stronger color of progressive and revolutionary forces in the Americas. And so Haiti is key, and that's why, for example, the Black Alliance for Peace has a Haiti's Americas team that's been working feverishly, trying to help people to understand the complexities of Haiti and for them to be in support of those efforts on the part of Haitian people themselves for their own national liberation. But last quick point on this. The fact that the U.S. is able to pull off bringing in these Kenyan troops into Haiti under the guise of Pan-Africanism is a very ominous development, and that has to be broke. It has to be beaten back. Also, we don't need what I call neoliberal Pan-Africanism.
I agree. And before we go, you did mention the Black Alliance for Peace. I want people to see. Let me find it here. This is another great resource, blackallianceforpeace.com. A people-centered human rights project against war, repression, and imperialism. You see there. Lots of great things going on here. Burkina Faso, Musa Springer, the U.S. Empire, with all kinds of various things going on here. Malcolm X Day, uh, on and on. African Liberation Day 2025. Lots of things going on with the Black Alliance for Peace. We've got, no compromise, no retreat. So the Black Alliance for Peace does a lot of great work internationally, a lot of great stuff for Haiti and Africa and really all of Gaza, all over the world. And I really appreciate the work that you all do at the Black Alliance for Peace. And I recommend that people go to blackallianceforpeace.com, keep up with the various things. They have various projects and ways that people can join, ways that people can get involved, etc. blackallianceforpeace.com is the place to go. Ajamu, I want to thank you very much for coming on, and hopefully we'll get you back next week. And if you have the time, maybe we can do a weekly thing.
Let's talk about that. I would love to do that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And I'll talk with you about getting maybe some of our friends in Africa. If you have some comments, if you know some people that are actually in Africa that we can talk to, or Africans here that are working on some of those various projects. If you know someone's working from Burkina Faso or on that project, feel free to connect me with them. I'd love to get someone
Definitely.
there. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Follow me on Rockfish. Follow me on Rumble, Telegram, all that other kind of stuff. And if you can afford to, certainly contribute, even if you can't. You can always follow me. Also, Substack. I got a Substack. And of course, now you'll see at the end, I have a P.O. box. So feel free to mail me at my P.O. box. If you want to mail whatever you want to mail, if you just want to send a letter and say hi, and you don't want to, you don't want to send it over the electronic media. If you want to send a donation, if you want to send a book, a writings, anything you want, you've got my P.O. box number. I check it every day. So thank you very much. And I think Ajamu Baraka and all the people over there that are doing great stuff. I'd love to see them standing up for Africa, standing up for Gaza, standing up for Haiti, standing up for Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua, and for justice worldwide. Coming back on in a few minutes, I got Dr. Jim Kavanaugh. I'm out.